Story 3. The Last Echo, Part 1. The Call from the Wound. The third time the past reached for him, Hakon Greymane was already awake. Sleep, such as it was for an Astartes, had never come easily since the Silent Vein. His rest capsule aboard Vargbjorn functioned as designed, its interior lit by a dim amber glow, its surfaces lined with devotional script and maintenance sigils. But whenever the shutters closed and the ship's distant engines became a low, constant thunder, his mind slipped back into corridors of rusted steel and guttering candles. A transport drifting where it should not. A cap on an altar. Bone in a PDF coat. He woke before the chronometer chimed, eyes snapping open in the near dark. His hands were already closing around the edges of the capsule, fingers digging into metal. For a moment, he did not know if he stood on Vargbjorn or in the bowels of Galatea's oath again. Then the present asserted itself. The air here was clean, filtered, tinged faintly with oil and incense. The gravity was constant. The pulse he felt in the metal under his boots was the familiar, steady beat of a strike cruiser jogging under half-thrust. No wrong angles in the walls, no whispers bleeding under the skin of reality. But something had woken him. He listened. Under the thrum of engines and the distant hiss of recyclers, he heard it. A thin vibration riding the hull, too high for mortal ears, too steady to be structural fatigue. A note he knew now in a way he had not before the vein. The warp was brushing the ship. Not with the blunt hammer blow of a storm or the flicking claws of a demonic intrusion. This felt like a finger tracing old scars. A wound being absently worried by unseen teeth. He swung his legs out of the capsule and stood, armor locks hissing as he sealed breastplate to gorge it. His warplate hung on the rack nearby, cleaned and patched after Kurnos reach, its grey surfaces still faintly scorched. The wolf-head icon on his pauldron watched him impassively. "We are not done then," he murmured. The vibration shivered again, a whisper through the hull. He had no proof, no cogitator readouts, no runic display, but he knew, with the same iron certainty that had guided his blade on 100 battlefields, that this was the same kind of touch he had felt when they first entered the Silent Vein. Not a storm, an echo. Hakon fitted his helm to his belt and stepped out into the corridor. Vargbjorn was a ship of war, but even warships had their rhythms. Crew shifts changed. The howls and roars of the training cages waxed and waned. The Mechanicus liturgies echoed in their forges, rising and falling according to some arcane cycle. But in the hours before an order, there was a particular quiet. Not peace, never that, but a held breath running from keel to mast. Hakon walked through it with the unhurried stride of a warrior who expected this quiet to end soon. He found Skorvald Ironseer in the Apothecarion, standing over a row of suspended sarcophagi. 4 of them hummed with slow, banked life. Brothers whose bodies were too broken for the present, awaiting the long surgeries, the grafts, the chance of rising again in new forms. One, cracked, dark, its interior empty, held only echo and dust. "You are awake early," Skorvald said without turning. "Or late, the lines blur at our age." "I am awake when the ship is not sleeping properly," Hakon said. Skorvald grunted. "The tech priests complain of Auspex ghosts," he said. "The navigators mutter of a prickle against their third eye. You feel it as a scratch in the hull. I, personally, feel it as an ache in my bones and an urge to shout at the younger brothers to polish their armor. The signs agree. Something is coming." Hakon stepped closer to the empty sarcophagus. A narrow brass plaque was bolted to its base. The name engraved there was not that of the interred Astartes. That warrior's name lay hidden in chapter records, known to the sagas and the wolf priests. This plaque bore another inscription, quietly added in smaller runes. Go 377, Galatea's oath. Here stood the line again. "You keep putting their memory in the wrong places," Hakon said. Skorvald shrugged, metal fittings clinking on his armor. "You think there is a correct place?" the wolf priest asked. "The galaxy is one vast ossuary. We merely decide which bones we keep track of." He turned at last, studying Hakon's face. "You heard it again," Skorvald said. "Not a question." "Yes," Hakon said. "The vein." "The same shape," Hakon said slowly. "Not as sharp. Far away, but real. a finger on a bruise. Skorvald's eyes narrowed. Then the past is not done making a nuisance of itself, he said. Come, the Jarl has summoned us to the strategium. Your timing, as always, is either impeccable or deeply inconvenient. I haven't decided which. The strategium of Vargbjorn had changed since the first time Hakon had stood within it beneath the image of Charon's gate. The table was the same, a circle of dull metal, its surface capable of projecting battlefields from orbit wide to knife range. The command positions were the same. The Jarl's dais, the Mechanicus stations, the Vox pits. But the hololithic overlays had grown denser. The war at Kurnos Reach had redrawn entire sectors. Sigils marked systems purged, others contested, others lost and blacked out. New threat runes had appeared where once there had been only numbers. At the center, a cluster of icons pulsed in imperial blue, a crusade fleet. Around it, in glaring crimson, the broken ring of a shattered enemy line. Jarl Ulfrik Ironpelt stood with his hands braced on the table's edge, staring at a separate projection hovering to one side. It was not a map. It was a waveform. Hakon knew it before he was close enough to resolve the details. Two short bursts, one long, a pause, a pattern written into his bones. Ulfric's scarred mouth twisted when he saw Hakon approach. Either fate has a sense of humor, the Jarl said, or you have been cursed in some particularly specific way. Skorvald snorted. Both, he said. Hakon's gaze fixed on the waveform. It's not from the vein, he said. The resonance is wrong. The underlying interference. Not the vein, Ulfrik agreed, but kin to it. He gestured to the Magos managing the auger feeds. Explain, Ulfrik said. The tech priest's Vox grill crackle. Source. Deep void. Uncharted system rimward of Kurnos Reach, the Magos intoned. Initial detection occurred when a Mechanicus survey sloop entered the region to confirm rumors of a derelict of non-imperial origin. The sloop did not return. This waveform was transmitted before loss of contact. The waveform looped again, like a heartbeat. Now the hollow overlaid the spectral signature with identification runes. Unidentified derelict. Class: Fortress Hulk. Local designation: Citadel-Null. Secondary signal: K-cipher Galatea encryption fragments. Skorvald's jaw clenched. Charon code, he said. Yes, Hakon said. His voice sounded strangely distant to his own ears. Ulfrik folded his arms across his chest, wolf pelt shifting. Our Mechanicus friends believe they have found a construct, the Jarl said. An accreted fortress hulk. A nest of wrecks drifted together and fused by time and the warp. They wanted to pick it apart, catalogue its relics, appease whatever data saints they pray to. Something objected, Skorvald said. Ulfrik nodded. The last Vox capture from the sloop is instructive, he said. Magos, play it. The waveform shrank, sliding aside. In its place, a three-dimensional Auspex capture flickered into being. A grainy, stuttering view from the survey vessel's prow. A shape loomed ahead of the sloop. It was less a ship than a reef. A tangled mass of hulls welded together by impossible forces. Imperial silhouettes jutted like bones. The spine of a cruiser, the jut of an orbital dock, the broken wings of a defense platform. Between them were darker, stranger shapes, angles that hurt the eye. Beneath it all, the faint curvature of a planetoid core, stripped to rock, an accreted fortress. Drifting alone, the Magos said, Vox flattening the word into a mechanical croak. The capture zoomed. On one protruding section of hull, half buried in other wreckage, Hakon saw the remains of a ship's prow plate. The name stamped into the metal was scorched and bent, but fragments remained. Galatea's oath, his heart stuttered. Galatea's oath was destroyed, Skorvald said, looking at Hakon. We saw it. We saw you order the charges. We destroyed a Galatea's oath, the Magos said. A specific instance, a particular configuration of matter and probability. The warp is less constrained. It remembers other possibilities. The Auspex capture lurched as something unseen struck the sloop. Static crawled across the view. For a heartbeat, the image tore sideways, and the fortress hulk was gone. In its place, the display showed a wall, a section of battered parapet, smoke, figures in flak armor, the silhouette of an Astartes with a wolf's head on his shoulder, sword raised. Then the image snapped back to the derelict. Vox screams cut across the recording. The sound of metal tearing, a single, flickering phrase in Binharic pattern rejection, temporal disjunction, unreal geometry. Then nothing. The hollow froze and dissolved. Silence settled over the stratagem. The Magos explorator attached to the crusade calls this place an echo-citadel, Ulfrik said, a knot in real space where shipwrecks and events have layered. Things that were, and things that might have been. Their words, not mine. A wound, Hakon said quietly. The vein spat out a piece of itself. It festered. Ulfrik nodded toward the waveform still hovering at the edge of the display. And into that infection something is broadcasting Charon code and Galatea encryption, the Jarl said. It is not a simple recording. The signal changes subtly with each loop. It reacts to Auspex scans. It has, according to our rune priests, a will. Hakon felt the weight of Skorvald's gaze on him. Say it, the wolf priest said. It's calling me, Hakon said. It was not bravado, it was not drama, it was simply true. He had felt the first tug before he knew the citadel existed. The note in the hull, the familiar shape of the code. Now that he'd seen the prow fragment and the wall imprint, the sensation was clearer. Like a hand closed around the back of his neck, pulling gently but insistently towards some unseen point in the dark. More accurately, Halvar Stormeye said, stepping forward from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. It is calling itself. You are merely part of its pattern. The rune priest's face was drawn, eyes shadowed. I have meditated on this wound, Halvar said. In the skein it is not a simple knot like the vein. It is a reflection. A place where an event repeated so strongly, across minds, across the warp, that reality recorded more than one version. Those versions are now bleeding together. The citadel is a lens. The signal is it trying to resolve into something coherent. He looked at Hakon. And you, Halvar said, are one of its anchors. Ulfrik exhaled slowly through his nose. I have the main crusade fleet moving to secure Kurnos Reach's outer ring, he said. We are short on time and long on enemies. The Ordo Xenos wants to divert forces to study this citadel. The Mechanicus wants to sanctify it, dismantle it, drag it back to Mars. The Inquisition wants to quarantine it and be done. The Wolf Lords want to know if it bites. He straightened. I know what you want, Ulfrik said to Hakon, but I will hear you say it. Hakon considered the hololithic echoes, the fortress of wreckage, the flicker of the breach, repeating itself across a void where it had never stood. If it is a reflection of Galatea's oath, he said. If it is a wound formed from what happened there, and from what happened when we destroyed her, then it is a danger. To us, to anyone who stumbles on it. It will not stay inert. It is already reacting. You think it will spread? Skorvald said. I think it will pull, Hakon said. Anything with a mind. Anything that remembers. Anything scarred. He looked at Ulfrik. I want permission to go, Hakon said. To enter the citadel, find the heart of the echo and end it. Ulfrik's lips twisted. Of course you do, he muttered. Skorvald snorted. This is not like the oath, the wolf priest said. There are no confirmed survivors, no children broadcasting on a weak signal, no ship with engines half alive, begging for rescue. This is a grave that refuses to lie still. All the more reason to put it down, Hakon said, or leave it to those whose job it is to deal with such things, Skorvald countered. Let the Ordo Malleus send a coven of psychers and some doomed grey knights. We are made for war, Hakon, not for unpicking the skein's worst knots. Halvar shook his head. The Ordos will take time to respond, the rune priest said. And this thing is not static. Its signature has grown in the last 3 days. It is starting to overlay itself on other places. Our navigators report faint, fleeting impressions of the breach in systems that have never known Charon. He gestured to the waveform. Left alone, Halvar said, it will seek other anchors, other oaths, other last stands to stitch itself to. Whatever happened at Galatea's oath and the vein is trying to repeat. Not identically, not exactly, but rhythmically. The citadel is a drum, and you want me to find it and stop the beat, Hakon said. Halvar inclined his head. You are tied to that rhythm, he said. Your presence may let us resolve it, or make it worse. The skein will not tell me which, Ulfrik grunted. This entire war is a chain of risks disguised as plans, the Jarl said. We have no time for indecision. He stabbed a finger at the hololith. The citadel sits on a vector that will intersect a civilian convoy evacuating 2 agri-worlds we just burned half to ash. Ulfrik said, farmers, techs, regimental families. The convoy's escorts are thin and already harried. If the Citadel's influence lashes out while they pass, we may see another Charon, or something worse. I cannot divert the main fleet to shepherd them around it. He looked from Hakon to Skorvald to Halvar and back. So here is my decision, Ulfrik said. Greymane, you will take a spear of brothers and a rune priest and go to Citadel-Null. You will enter it. You will determine whether it can be made safe, or whether it must be scoured from existence. You will do this without dragging half the crusade with you into whatever madness coils inside. He thumped his fist once on the table. You will also do it quickly, Ulfrik said, because in 5 standard days that civilian convoy will pass within range. If you have not resolved the threat by then, I will be forced to choose between diverting my warships to protect non-combatants or letting them risk contamination and death. Skorvald's eyes narrowed. You put the choice on his shoulders in advance, the wolf priest said. Yes, Ulfrik said, because fate will do it anyway. Better we name the trap we're walking into than pretend we do not see it. He faced Hakon fully. This will be your 3rd time dancing with Charon's ghosts, Ulfrik said. The first on the wall, the second in the vein, now in this echo of both. If I believed in narratives as the poets do, I would say this is the last movement in a song that has played too long. Hakon met his gaze without flinching. Then it is time to end it, he said. Ulfrik huffed. Always so certain, the Jarl said. Very well. Take Bjarki, Torvald, a score of others you trust not to lose their wits in a haunted hull. Take Halvar to keep the worst of the warp off your backs. Take Skorvald to shout at you when you start doing something noble and stupid. And when the convoy nears and the citadel still stands, Skorvald asked quietly. Ulfrik's eyes hardened. Then the Jarl said, we learn which oath weighs more on an iron wolf's shoulders. They gathered in the launch bay while the ship's bells tolled low and steady. Hakon walked among his chosen brothers, the rhythm of the bells rattling through the deck. The air reeked of fuel and ozone, and the faint tang of incense burned for machine spirits. Bjarki thumped his chestplate as Hakon approached. Going back into haunted metal again, the boisterous warrior said. At this rate, the sagas will start calling us the ghost wolves instead. If they do, it will be because you do not know when to shut your mouth, Skorvald said dryly from behind Hakon. Bjarki grinned. That too, Elder. Torvald checked the seals on his heavy weapon harness, his features calm. Charges prepared, he said. Enough melter to crack a fortress spine, enough promethium to burn a small city, or one irritating echo-citadel. Least if we fail to reason with it, we can argue in the language of fire, Bjarki said. Halvar stood a little apart, staff in hand, eyes half-lidded. The runes carved into his armor glowed faintly, reacting to currents only he could see. It does not like us coming, the rune priest said quietly as Hakon joined him. The citadel pricks at the edges of my senses, not like an organized mind, like a storm that has noticed a ship and wonders what it will sound like when it breaks. Does it feel like the vein? Hakon asked. No, Halvar said. The vein was a hole. This is a scar. Raised, angry, poorly healed. Good, Bjarki said. Scars are honest. Hakon looked over the assembled warriors, counting them, not with his eyes but with the part of his mind that measured capability and loss. 24 iron wolves. 1 rune priest. 1 wolf priest. 1 gunship and its smaller kin. Enough to die meaningfully. Skorvald stepped close, lowering his voice so only Hakon heard. You heard Ulfrik, the wolf priest said. 5 days until the convoy passes within reach. You will not have the luxury of losing yourself in this wound. We cannot afford to have you standing in some corridor arguing with ghosts while farmers burn. I know, Hakon said. Do you? Skorvald asked. You have a talent for letting old promises drown out new needs. Hakon's jaw clenched. Charon, I chose to swear my oath, he said. At the vein, I chose to end a ship's suffering instead of chasing phantoms. I made my choices and lived with them, and now you will be asked to make them again, Skorvald said, only louder. He put a hand, heavy and calloused, on Hakon's pauldron. Listen to me, Hakon Greymane, Skorvald said, when you stand at the heart of that thing, and you will, because you do not know how to stand anywhere but at the heart of things, you will be tempted to think that the dead deserve more of you than the living. You will be wrong. Honor the fallen, but do not join them when the living still need your stubbornness. Hakon met the older warrior's eyes. I will not abandon them, he said. Which them? Skorvald asked. Hakon did not answer. The wolf priest sighed. Least you are honest about your confusion. Skorvald said. That's an improvement over most heroes. He stepped back. Time to go, he said. Alarms whooped softly as the launch cycle began. Hakon climbed the ramp into the lead gunship. The interior was familiar now. Racks for weapons, crash seats for transhuman bodies, ritual marks carved into support struts by generations of warriors. He took his place at the command cradle. Brothers, he voxed, his voice filling the hull. We go into an echo of an old wound. You all know the stories. Some of you were there when the oath died. Others have heard the sagas and shrugged them off. Do not shrug in there. Do not let the past take you by the throat. If you see something that looks like home, remember, home is far away. This is a lie made from fragments of truth. Bjarki chuckled quietly. Never thought I'd see the day when Greymane gave a speech about ignoring symbols, he muttered. Symbols have their place, Hakon said. This citadel is trying to turn them into weapons. We will not let it. Halvar planted his staff, the runes along its length flaring once. The Gala field will hold as we approach. The rune priest said, but inside the citadel we will be walking along the border between realities. Keep your minds on the solid things. Your warplate, your bolter, the brother to your left, the brother to your right. And if we feel something trying to whisper in our ears, Bjarki asked. Shoot it, Halvar said. If the whispering continues, tell me, and I will see whether it is worth listening to or worth killing. Good doctrine, Skorvald said approvingly. The gunship's engines roared to life. The deck vibrated under Hakon's boots. Through the forward viewport he saw Vargbjorn's launch bay fall away, replaced by the black throat of the void. Somewhere ahead, an impossible fortress drifted, wrapped in the memories of people who had once stood on a wall and refused to run. Somewhere behind, in the cold lanes of the Crusade, a convoy of helpless ships lit their drives and began their slow, careful passage toward a rendezvous that might kill them. Between those two fates, Hakon and his brothers flew. The call has come, Skorvald said quietly over the private link. The wound is open. You go to see whether it can be closed or must be cut deeper to save the limb. Hakon watched the stars warp as the gunship hit translation speed, the taste of metal and old smoke sharp in his mouth. Then let us see what waits inside the last echo, he said. The void swallowed them.